The Restless Prophet. We're looking at the story of Jonah this week, and it's a fascinating story, but we're looking at it through the lenses of this quarter's theme, which is rest and restlessness. This perspective through Jonah is very interesting because it's about people who know God, who talk to Him, but who sometimes don't like what He has in mind and makes them feel uncomfortable. This can be any one of us. So, what can we take from Jonah's unrest? First, let's look at his fleeing from God and his mission.
Let me start with this. On one side, it is so easy to answer the question, why did Jonah flee from God? Of course, who wants to give up on his personal dreams, goals, and personal achievements and go after somebody else's plans and ideas, be it God's in this case? On a second thought, how difficult it is to somebody who says no to God. Jonah had his own reasons. Probably he hated the Ninevites. Probably he had strong feeling of resentment toward the Assyrians who were breaking every city and every culture on their own way to dominance. Jonah had issues, couldn't accept God's call, was not looking for a fix-up, but a runaway. Very common reaction when we face change and challenge.
But for me, this is bigger than not accepting a call. It's more of disagreeing with God's vision, and we are all vulnerable to this because we all have our versions and our understanding of what is good and right. We have our versions of what God wants, and we risk to not really be open and flexible for Him to direct these things and for us to follow.
We love to be masters of our own lives and our own destiny. We love to calculate our move step by step ahead so that life does not surprise us and we stay in control. I believe that Jonah was a smart man too, probably very smart man. However, he had miscalculated the probability of being the reason to have a whole ship of sailors and passengers sunk in the stormy waters. How probable was that? I would say zero. He had no part in navigating the ship. So how could he be a reason for a disaster like that? He had to admit defeat, to admit dependency, to admit superiority to God. However, it was God's grace that saved him from the storm and from the drowning waters. It was God's grace that helped him realize God's caring nature, helped him feel the love and the fatherly plans for him. He felt differently. He felt inspired by God's power and grace. He was able to align his heart with God's mission and gave him rest and peace of mind.
And well, the lesson says that Jonah got 3 days of rest in a dark, wet, and smelly place. It takes humility to recognize and to experience grace. So this seems that it helped.
Finally, Jonah went to Nineveh with love for his God, but with resentment toward the Ninevites. He had success in his mission, but he felt miserably in understanding God's purpose. For Jonah to overcome his prejudices toward the Assyrian people had to go through a fiery furnace, walking hand in hand with God. God's success in Nineveh was in his genuine love for them, not in the condemnation that Jonah persuaded. How often we underestimate that God does whatever he do for people because he loves them. Whatever mission and whatever plans on their own have no value. Only if they're out of love, only if they are the product of love for that same people, they can deliver salvation. Sometimes we see the mission as achievement instead of as a grace for the people we serve. In moments like that, we struggle with the same unrest as Jonah.
Jonah's mission was a success, but he took it as a failure because he was afraid that he looked foolish. Even if we understand and master all the things we talked about this quarter, as long as things are about us, we will experience unrest and sometimes even anger as Christians and as God's people. God's love toward us is amazing. His grace is generous, but to keep ourselves in God's love, the lesson points out that we need to reach out to others. Join us again next week to wrap up this study with the lesson, The Ultimate Rest.